What's going on, everybody? This is Kyle Robarts from Robarts Realty. Last week, walked around the neighborhood and gave you some thoughts on my journey to real estate. So figured we'd give that another run, and every Sunday maybe, if I'm available, walk around and give you some thoughts on real estate. So I hope everybody's having a good Halloween. At our house, we've been watching Addams Family and Ghostbusters with our little girls, and going to try to trick or treat. Always exciting with the kiddos for Halloween. They get so into it. I thought what I'd talk about this week is a couple of ways to get started in real estate. And the topic I thought I would talk about today is a home equity line of credit or a cash out refinance, and my thoughts on that. This came up because a friend of mine and I had lunch at Rudy's Barbecue here in Waco. Shout out to Rudy's Barbecue. And he's 20 years older than me, and we've been pretty close, worked together at my previous place of employment, and he was thinking about how he could kind of get started in real estate. So I want to talk about what some options are for people who have decent incomes, W-2 jobs, but kind of want to dive into real estate, maybe on the side. And if you caught me last week, my intention was for my real estate business to be on the side, but that changed and I jumped in full time. So anyway, there's a couple of ways that you can get some capital to start investing in your first property, your first rental property. You may not have the time and energy for a flip or a BRRRR like we talked about last week, but there are plenty of rental properties in town, in your town likely, that are turnkey for the most part. Probably landlords sell their houses already with a tenant in them, and you can just take over the lease. And if you don't have a lot of money sitting in the bank to go towards that, there's a couple of ways you can leverage your primary residence if you've been in for a while and you have equity. So that's the first thing, is it's probably key to have been in your house for a few years and to have enough equity, as the property has hopefully appreciated where you live, to have a little gap between what your property is worth and what you owe on your mortgage. So a lot of people, because of the crazy low interest rates over the past couple years, have been taking advantage of refinancing into a lower interest rate. And that's smart because you can lower your monthly payment and stretch out your cash a little bit further. And others have taken advantage of both the interest rate and taking cash out, and maybe you start a new loan at a higher rate. So let's use some round numbers, and let's talk about just a straight cash out refinance as opposed to a home equity line of credit, which I want to cover later because that's one of the sources I use for funding projects. So a cash out refinance, essentially, you need to have decent credit, you need to have decent income, and you need to have decent equity. So last week we covered banks that will take on 70 to 75% loan to value on investment properties. Well, the same thing is true on your primary residence on a refinance. I think there are probably some banks that may even go up to 80%, depending on your relationship and their position and your position. But you're looking at anywhere between 65 to 80%. So using round numbers, let's say your house is worth $300,000 and your mortgage balance is only $150,000. So there's a $150 cushion there, right? So if you were to put a sign in the yard and sell it, and you sold it for $300 and you owed $150, you'd come out with $150,000 on the other side. On a cash out refinance, the bank would give you 70 or 75% or any of the numbers we talked about in between of the gap. So the gap is $150,000. That would be your profit. So you could go, so if you got your house 5 years ago at a 6% interest rate, and now a lot of them are between 3 and 4%, you could save a couple percentage points on your monthly payment and then take out some cash on top of it, up to 60 or 70%. So you could essentially get cash, and maybe if you do the math, you even keep your payment the same, and that money, of course, is going to be tax-free. But from an investor standpoint, if you want to get into rental properties, and we use the 300 worth and the 150 mortgage, let's say that's 70%. What is that? 150 minus 45. So you'd essentially could get a line of credit, theoretically, if you go through the bank's process, you have a decent W-2 income and decent credit, and you could get a line of credit for up to $105,000. Now, where I'm at in Waco, you could probably find a smaller rental property for $105,000. So, I've lost my train of thought a little bit because we're talking about refinance. If you've got a cash out refinance, that $105,000 of capital would come into your pocket, and then you'd have a new loan of your existing balance on your mortgage, so $150,000 if we're using our hypothetical scenario, now plus $105,000 on top that you take the check from the bank. And so your new mortgage would roughly be $255,000 on your $300,000 house, but you'd have $100,000 in your pocket tax-free. And that doesn't include fees and all the stuff that your bank would take from you. So you could take that $105,000, buy a rental property, and you've got a cash flowing property, hopefully, if you've done your homework. And that would be a good way to do things. So now let's talk about a home equity line of credit. The home equity line of credit is the same process. So they're going to take the value of your house and the balance of your mortgage and give you a line of credit, maybe a slightly higher interest rate. I'll share with you mine. The one that I pulled 2 years ago was 3.875%. And it's not bad. I mean, it's a really low interest rate, and I have access to that line of credit, and as long as I pay it back, I can have access to it again and again. Now, it's not fixed like a 30-year mortgage. It's got terms, it's got amortization, but also it has a balloon at 5 years, so we would have to renegotiate a new rate or another refinance in 5 years. So in 2025, I will have to look at that. But the advantage of having a home equity line of credit, I'm very young into the real estate game, but I've used my home equity line of credit and paid it off twice, and I'm using it again on a third project. So what happens is I used private money to purchase my first property, a private money loan. I used a combination actually of two private loans and my own money to cash purchase a house in which I did the BRRRR method. So after a 6-month seasoning period, when all that renovation was done, there was a renter in the house, and we refinanced on the new value. I was able to pull most of my capital back. So I was able to pay back the people that lent me money, and I was able to satisfy the line of credit 100%. Mine was $50,000, so I used that as my budget for the rehab. I think we ended up spending $52,000, so I just took the $2,000 out of pocket. But essentially, once that money was back in the line of credit, it was paid off. And so when it came time to go after a second property and rehab it, I just redrew the $50,000 as I needed it to renovate the second house. And then when we sold it, you get the money back and you start the process over again. So if you can reinvest your same dollars over and over and over again and build your rental or your flip and sell portfolio, it's a huge advantage if you can secure a line of credit, and you can use it for purchase prices. So if you found a $150,000 rental property and you had a $50,000 line of credit, you could put some or all of that money of the line of credit down to secure the property, and it's still a pretty low interest rate. And then you could use the cash flow from your rentals and any money you want to hustle on the side to work and pay that HELOC off, and then you can just collect the cash flow at a later time. If you can defer your gratification, then you can just use that HELOC to your advantage. So in my situation, I don't want to tie up my HELOC into my properties for too long because I'd like to use it again. But if you're just looking for a way to get started and put some money in just to secure a property, if you don't have enough money for a down payment and you found a good deal, just know that your cash flow for the first couple of years until you get your line of credit paid off is going to go towards fulfilling that line of credit. And then you could go do another one. Or if you've been paying it off all along and there's a big repair or something and you've paid back about $15,000 of it and there's a $5,000 repair, you can draw another $5,000 on that HELOC as long as you have the balance. So not going to go 30 minutes today. Just thought I'd share my thoughts. I am not a financial advisor. This is just my opinion and the way I've gotten started in real estate. I gave my friend some advice, but at the end of the day, it's going to be his decision. In fact, I'll share what he decided to do after I kind of spelled that out for him. And I actually called a family member of mine who's in the financial arena, and they said it's much easier. He wants to take advantage of the lower interest rate on his home. So he's going to refinance their first standard without taking cash out. He's just going to pay the closing costs to save about 2 points on his mortgage. Then, after that's complete, he's going to start the process of a home equity line of credit. So he intends to keep his mortgage right where it's at, a few $1,000s out of pocket for the closing costs to refinance into better terms. So that'll take him a little bit of time to secure both of those. So he'll be moving right along in just a few months and be able to draw out some equity to invest in property at a pretty cheap rate. So if anybody has any questions about that, hit me up on social. This will be on all my outlets. I started a YouTube after my video last week, but I don't have enough subscribers yet to have a custom URL. So you can just go to youtube.com and search for Robarts Realty. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. You can find me, Kyle Robarts. It's like Roberts, but with an A. You can find my individual accounts. And our email address over at Robarts Realty is info@Robarts, ROBARTS, realty.com. So if you've got any questions on home equity lines of credit or cash out refinances, I'd be glad to answer the questions that I have knowledge of, and maybe get you in touch with others if I don't have the answers. Thanks for watching, and good luck on your real estate investing journey.